Welcome to the Hindu Daily.
Right, and today we're jumping straight into the first article.
Yeah, we are immediately looking at a really classic example of trying to lock down a physical territory. So this is from the FAQ section, and it's regarding the new Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Amendment Bill 2026.
Exactly. And the core of this bill, which just passed on April 2nd, is officially recognizing Amaravati as the sole statutory capital of Andhra Pradesh.
Which has been a massive point of contention.
Right. To really grasp the mechanics of this, we have to trace the timeline all the way back to 2014. That was when the undivided state was bifurcated.
Right, the creation of Telangana.
Yeah. So that original 2014 act created Telangana and the residual state of Andhra Pradesh. And they had this agreement that Hyderabad would serve as a joint capital for a maximum of 10 years.
And that 10-year clock just officially ran out, right, in June 2024.
Exactly. Thumbs up.
Okay, so in the intervening years, the actual location of the new capital became this huge political pendulum, because initially the NDA government declared Amaravati the new capital.
Yeah, under Chief Minister N. Chandrababu Naidu.
Right, but then the YSRCP took power in 2019, and they completely scrapped that vision. Like, they proposed a three-capital plan instead.
Which was a really radical shift. Visakhapatnam for the executive branch, Amaravati for the legislature, and Kurnool for the judiciary.
Right, and that naturally triggered immense legal friction. By March 2022, the Andhra Pradesh High Court ruled that the capital could not be shifted out of Amaravati.
Basically stating the state government lacked the legislative competence to suddenly reverse that foundational 2014 policy.
And the YSRCP challenged this in the Supreme Court, but then the political landscape shifted again.
Yeah, with the NDA recently returning to power, that special leave petition is actually being withdrawn.
Looking at this timeline, it honestly feels like a family trying to build a house, but the architects keep tearing up the foundation blueprints.
That's a really good way to put it.
Like, one architect says the kitchen goes here, and then the next one bulldozes it to build a garage. Meanwhile, the homeowners, meaning the citizens, and specifically the farmers, are just left in absolute limbo.
They are.
And I want to pause here just to say, to look at this objectively for you listening, we have to weigh both sides of the current friction. We're just reporting the facts from the source material here. We're not taking a political side. But the YSRCP strongly opposes this 2026 bill because they argue it ignores unfulfilled promises to farmers.
Right, specifically under the land pooling scheme.
Yeah, where farmers gave up their land in exchange for developed plots that just never materialized. So they're demanding a clear timeline for compensation.
And on the other side of that tension, the current government's priority was establishing a legal lock that no future administration could pick.
They needed something permanent.
Exactly. They realized that standard state-level policy just wasn't binding enough to protect the project. So they went straight to the union government and successfully requested an amendment to Section 5 of the Central 2014 Act.
Just explicitly inserting the words, at Amaravati.
Yes. By cementing the location into central legislation, they are attempting to definitively prevent any future state administration from splitting or shifting the capital again. It is a textbook move to secure jurisdictional control.
Right. But, while domestic governments can pass internal laws to lock down their commitments like that, managing international commitments is proving to be a much more volatile game.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to our second FAQ article. There is a massive debate erupting over what was supposed to be the ultimate binding treaty, which is NATO.
Yeah, the geopolitical friction here is really severe right now. U.S. President Donald Trump recently stated that pulling the United States out of NATO is, quote, beyond reconsideration.
Beyond reconsideration.
Right, and this is a direct fallout from the ongoing U.S.-Israel war with Iran. Several key NATO allies, specifically France, Spain, the UK, and Germany, have outright refused U.S. requests for airspace and military support.
Okay, but let me push back on this, though, because if we look at Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, it famously states that an armed attack against one member is considered an attack against them all.
Yes, that's the core tenet.
So, if the U.S. is currently engaged in a conflict, isn't there a technical justification to expect automatic support from these European nations? Isn't Trump technically justified?
Well, we have to separate the literal text from how the treaty's operational scope is actually interpreted by its members today. NATO was founded in 1949 strictly on the principle of collective defensive security against direct invasions.
Like the Soviet threat back then.
Exactly. It currently operates with 32 members under a unified command structure known as SHAPE. the supreme headquarters, Allied powers, Europe. And the U.S. essentially anchors this entire structure. They fund about 62% of the alliance's defense spending.
Wow, 62%.
Yeah, and they provide the ultimate nuclear umbrella. However, European nations draw a really sharp, nuanced line between a defensive alliance and what they perceive as unilateral offensive operations.
Ah, I see.
They view the current operations involving Iran and even past U.S. posturing toward places like Venezuela as offensive regime change efforts initiated by the U.S., not an actual invasion of U.S. soil. So to them, Article 5 is a shield. It's not a blank check to be dragged into offensive strikes.
Okay, that definitely makes the reluctance understandable. But pulling the U.S. out of a 76-year-old alliance? I mean, that can't be as simple as canceling a streaming subscription.
No, the logistical and legal hurdles are daunting. Under Article 13 of the treaty, a member actually has to give a formal one-year notice of withdrawal.
Just a lot of paperwork.
Right, but the much larger obstacle is domestic U.S. law. Because, anticipating this exact vulnerability, the Biden administration pushed legislation through Congress in 2023. And that explicitly requires the president to secure Senate or congressional approval before formally withdrawing from NATO.
So a president cannot simply sign an executive order and walk away? I mean, the paperwork alone is a nightmare. But the global implications of even attempting a withdrawal are what really stand out to me. It would instantly fundamentally remake the global security architecture.
Without a doubt.
A weakened Western coalition automatically shifts the power balance toward nations like Russia and China.
It really just demonstrates how fragile cross-border alliances actually are when the definition of mutual defense is contested.
Yeah, and speaking of regulating what crosses borders, our third FAQ article focuses on the Indian government tightening its own grip on how foreign resources cross its borders.
Right, the FCRA bill.
Exactly, the proposed Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Bill 2026.
Yeah.
It's introducing some really sweeping changes. Because currently there are roughly 16,000 NGOs in India receiving around 22,000 crore rupees annually from foreign sources.
It's a massive amount of capital. And the most significant mechanism in this new bill is the creation of a designated authority that essentially wields the powers of a civil court.
Wait, a civil court?
Yeah. If an NGO's FCRA registration is suspended or canceled, this new authority has the power to take over, manage, or completely liquidate the organization's assets.
Wow.
The legislation also widens the net of individual accountability. The definition of a key functionary is being expanded way beyond standard office bearers. Now, it can include trustees, partners, or even the Karta of a Hindu undivided family.
And the Karta being the legally recognized manager of a joint family's estate, right?
Exactly. Oh, and they also reduced the maximum imprisonment for violations from 5 years down to 1 year, but they added a requirement for prior central approval before state police can investigate FCRA complaints.
Okay, practically speaking, this fundamentally changes the day-to-day reality for these organizations. I was thinking about it like it's like having a landlord who, instead of just shutting off your electricity because you broke a clause in the lease, suddenly has the legal authority to walk in, seize your living room furniture, and auction it off.
That's a very vivid comparison, but structurally accurate.
And again, just to be totally impartial for you listening, we're just conveying the stances here. But prominent opposition voices, including the Catholic Bishops' Conference and the chief ministers of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, are raising serious alarms about executive overreach.
Yes, they are expressing deep concerns that these mechanisms could be weaponized to seize the assets of minority institutions.
While the government's stated rationale focuses entirely on internal security, they argue that centralizing this power is the only way to ensure foreign funds do not compromise national stability.
What is really critical to understand here is the tactical shift in how the government handles these organizations. I mean, the previous 2010 Act was largely focused on monitoring the flow of liquid funds.
Like just watching the bank accounts.
Right. But this 2026 bill addresses what administrators viewed as a blind spot. It moves beyond monitoring the cash to asserting direct physical jurisdiction over the tangible assets, the buildings, the vehicles, the equipment, all the stuff that the foreign money actually purchased.
So it's a massive escalation in the drive for total jurisdictional control.
It really is.
And that same drive for supremacy isn't just confined to Earth. Let's transition to the science section, where the launch of the NASA Artemis II mission is highlighting a totally different scale of geopolitical competition.
The Artemis mission, the April 2nd launch, is just a phenomenal feat of engineering. We are talking about the Space Launch System, which is a towering 98-meter tall rocket.
That's huge.
Yeah. and it is carrying the Orion capsule. To visualize Orion, imagine a pressurized module roughly the size of a Maruti Swift car, but it has to sustain 4 astronauts in deep space for 21 days.
It's an incredible technical achievement for sure. But I have to ask, here's the question that stands out to me. Why does the geopolitical framing matter so much right now? We already won the race in 1969. So why is Washington suddenly treating the prospect of Chinese astronauts or taikonauts touching the lunar surface first in this decade as like a national emergency?
Because the underlying goal has completely evolved. This is no longer driven by the romanticism of scientific exploration that really defined the Apollo era. The modern framework is techno-nationalist development. The U.S. views this as a high-stakes proxy battle to project technological supremacy to the rest of the world. Because in recent years, Washington has felt deeply undermined by China's rapid, aggressive advancements in sectors like advanced semiconductors and clean energy manufacturing.
Oh, so landing on the moon isn't about geology at all. It's basically a billboard for global dominance.
That is the core of it. The U.S. government is openly framing Artemis as an urgent race to reassert its position as the undisputed leader in the highest domains of technology.
And what about China's perspective?
Interestingly, the China National Space Administration approaches the public narrative completely differently. They don't frame it as a sprint against the Americans. They present their lunar program as a methodical, long-term, state-funded developmental milestone.
So it's a race for control over the narrative of the future. And, while nations are trying to assert dominance over space, another article in the profile section shows physicists completely rewriting the rules of control at the absolute microscopic level.
This is such a fascinating breakthrough. It involves a foundational principle of quantum physics known as the no-cloning theorem. For decades, the accepted law of physics was that it is simply impossible to make a perfect, identical copy of an unknown quantum state.
Right, because previous attempts to force a copy were always flawed.
Yeah.
Like the best researchers could manage was an imperfect clone with a maximum fidelity of about 83%.
Exactly.
But now, a team using the IBM Heron R2 processors has found an astonishing loophole. They have successfully manufactured 100% perfect copies of quantum data.
It's unprecedented. They tested this by generating up to 729 flawless clones using a system of 154 qubits.
So how did they do it? How did they bypass the theorem?
Well, the mechanism they used is what makes this a true paradigm shift. They didn't just copy the data openly. They had to encrypt or scramble the clones using what are called noise qubits. And these noise qubits essentially act as a highly volatile decryption key.
I was reading through the mechanics of this, and it literally functions like a self-destructing message from Mission Impossible.
Yes.
Like you can manufacture hundreds of these perfectly secure locked briefcases. But the fundamental law of the universe still exacts a toll. The exact microsecond you use the key to open just one of those briefcases to read the data, the key is entirely consumed.
Right.
The act of reading destroys the encryption framework, and all the other 728 briefcases permanently and instantly melt down into random useless noise. You get exactly one successful retrieval.
That visual perfectly captures the reality of the physics, and the implications of this reshape our entire understanding of quantum mechanics.
How so?
Well, it proves that the foundational constraint of our universe is not that quantum information cannot be copied. The true constraint is that access to that copied information is strictly physically limited to a single retrieval event.
So what does this mean for, the tech sector?
For the technology sector, this loophole is monumental. It takes concepts like redundant quantum cloud computing and secure quantum data backups out of the realm of science fiction and makes them a practical physical possibility.
That is wild. And, moving from the delicate microscopic control of volatile quantum data, the Spotlight section highlights a very different struggle for control, one involving massive, highly volatile biological forces.
Right. This brings us to the severe human-elephant conflict happening in the tri-state border area that intersects Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka.
The situation on the ground there is just tragic. Rapidly expanding agriculture and new highway infrastructure have severely fragmented the traditional forest corridors. So wild elephant herds, who are confused and cut off from their migration routes, are increasingly forced into human habitats.
It's a disaster for everyone involved.
Yeah, farmers are seeing their entire livelihoods destroyed overnight as crops are trampled, and the cost in both human and elephant lives is rising. But the Forest Department is utilizing an incredible strategy to regain control, using these elephants known as Kumkis.
Kumkis are captive elephants that undergo specialized, intensive training to serve as gentle guides for these wild herds, steering them away from vulnerable villages.
And there are specific camps for this, right?
Yeah, the Naniala camp has been running this program utilizing two majestic elephants in their 60s, named Jayanth and Vinayak. And the program's effectiveness actually led to the recent opening of a new camp in Palamanur, bringing in four younger elephants from Karnataka named Krishna, Abhimanyu, Ranjan, and Deva.
The training process is fascinating. These Kumkis learn to respond to up to 64 distinct commands from their mahouts and kavadis. And reading the accounts of how Jayanth and Vinayak operate in the field, they sound exactly like incredibly polite but deeply intimidating bouncers at a crowded club.
That's hilarious, but very true.
Like, when a wild, panicked herd approaches a village, Jayanth just steps forward. His sheer physical presence and calm confidence immediately command respect from the wild elephants. Meanwhile, Vinayak hangs back slightly, scanning the herd, ready to step in and de-escalate if a younger wild male challenges them.
Right, they communicate in low rumbles and subtle body language.
Yeah, gently guiding the rowdy patrons back into the forest without ever having to throw a single punch.
The de-escalation tactics are remarkable. But the broader impact of the Kumki program is the psychological shift it has triggered in the local communities.
Which is huge.
It is. For decades, farmers understandably viewed wild elephants through a lens of pure conflict. They saw them solely as destructive, dangerous pests, and that fear often led to violent confrontations. But the visible success of the Kumki elephants is slowly replacing that fear with empathy.
So the mindset is changing.
Yes. The human mindset in the region is transitioning from a paradigm of active conflict to one of coexistence, recognizing that these herds are simply trapped and looking for a safe path.
Though it is important to note that the empathy hasn't fully translated into financial support yet. The state launched a public adoption program to help offset the massive daily costs of feeding and caring for these Kumki elephants, and it unfortunately saw zero response from the public.
Which is a shame, because the financial burden of maintaining these environmental guides is immense. And, the economic damage caused by the initial disruption of the elephant's traditional travel routes is a prime example of how altering physical pathways devastates a local ecosystem.
It really is.
And we are seeing a parallel economic devastation covered in our second Spotlight article. But this time, the disrupted pathways are global flight routes, and the victim is the economy of Kerala.
Yeah, this one is rough. Because if you walk down Kovalam Beach in Kerala in late March, it should be bustling with European tourists. But instead, right now, the beaches are uncharacteristically empty.
The local tourism industry is feeling the direct, brutal ripple effects of the U.S.-Israel war with Iran.
The mechanics of this economic hit are fascinating and terrifying. The geopolitical conflict in West Asia has forced major airspace closures and rerouting around massive global transit hubs like Doha and Dubai.
Right, which are critical for travel to India.
Exactly. European tourists, who rely heavily on those specific hubs, are finding themselves stranded, or they're simply canceling their trips entirely. And Kerala's highly lucrative wellness and medical tourism sector is taking an absolute beating because 85% of their international clients transit through the Gulf.
It's a massive bottleneck.
And the domino effect touches everyone. Like, local beach eateries are being forced to shut their doors because the logistical disruptions have caused a severe shortage of LPG cooking cylinders.
And the impact extends far beyond just the hospitality sector. Kerala's economy is uniquely intertwined with the Gulf region. There are over 3.5 million Keralites currently working there as expatriates.
Wow, 3.5 million.
Yeah. And the instability has led to reports of widespread 20% pay cuts and sudden job insecurity. Consequently, many of these expatriates are hoarding their savings and skipping their usual travel home, even with the highly anticipated assembly elections coming up.
I do want to challenge the severity of this, though. Because Kerala's economy is incredibly resilient. I mean, they navigated the 2008 global financial meltdown, and they survived the total global halt of the COVID-19 pandemic. So is a drop in transit flights just a temporary seasonal blip, or are we looking at a deeper structural threat to the state's economy?
Analysts are viewing this as a profound structural threat. S. Iridaya Rajan from the International Institute of Migration and Development pointed out that this crisis has the potential to be as damaging as the 2008 meltdown and the COVID pandemic combined.
Wait, combined?
Yes. The crucial difference is that past geopolitical conflicts were often localized to a single country. But the current airspace and economic disruptions are suffocating the entire Gulf region simultaneously. To really understand the stakes, look at the sheer volume of remittances. 2.16 lakh crore rupees flowed into Kerala's economy in 2023 alone.
That's staggering.
Right, so this isn't abstract high-level economics. Global geopolitics is directly crashing into microeconomies. It is the local cab driver whose airport runs have dropped by 70% and the beach shack operator who suddenly cannot afford to pay his staff.
The physical realities of blocked flight paths and shrinking paychecks are, understandably, making voters in Kerala extremely anxious about their future. But turning to our final article in the magazine section, what is truly wild is that the political campaigns trying to win the votes of these anxious citizens have almost entirely abandoned the physical world.
Yes, the real battle is happening in a completely alternate virtual reality.
The pivot to Instagram as India's primary political battleground has been explosive. The user base numbers alone dictate this shift. India currently has 481 million active Instagram users.
500 million people.
Yeah. Furthermore, 37% of Indians are now explicitly using the platform as a primary source for news consumption. That's a growth rate that is actually outpacing YouTube. Politicians are abandoning traditional megaphones for ring lights. Like in Kerala, Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan is supplementing massive physical rallies with casual, highly produced interview segments with local financial influencers.
And down in Tamil Nadu, Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has launched an entire digital campaign dubbed Vibe with MKS. He deliberately sheds his traditional political attire to film casual interactions with child influencers.
It's wild. But the strategies go far beyond influencer collaborations. The aggressive deployment of artificial intelligence is reshaping the content completely. We are seeing incredibly realistic AI-generated videos of figures like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin wearing traditional munus appearing to casually campaign on the streets of South India.
It's surreal to watch.
And the Congress Party in Tamil Nadu has even introduced a fully AI-generated digital mascot named Rakama to deliver their talking points.
But beneath the flashy AI mascots, there is an intense shadow war happening. Political parties are utilizing networks of micro-influencers to stealthily spread partisan memes. Simultaneously, and again, analyzing this impartially, we have to look at how the platform itself governs this space.
Right, Meta's policies.
Yes. Meta is actively executing content moderation policies based on government directives, which has led to the controversial takedown of viral political reels from independent media outlets and comedians.
It's a very tightly controlled environment.
And the architecture of the platform's algorithm is the most critical factor here, because the algorithm thrives on confirmation bias. It is designed to learn exactly what ideological content keeps a user watching, and then it exclusively feeds them more of that exact perspective.
So it effectively blinds the user to nuance or opposing policy arguments.
Exactly.
Analyzing how this content is packaged and consumed, it feels like the democratic process has been turned into fast food. Like a complex piece of legislation is boiled down into a flashy 30-second AI-generated bite. It tastes great, it triggers a quick laugh or a burst of outrage, and it completely satisfies an immediate craving for entertainment while you wait for the bus. But it completely lacks the actual nutritional depth required to genuinely inform a voter. And that lack of depth translates directly to a lack of real-world mobilization. A recent study by Amity University analyzed the behavior of Gen Z voters in South India. They found a massive disconnect between digital engagement and civic action.
What were the numbers?
Well, while 72% of the survey demographic regularly consume and engage with this highly emotive political content on Instagram, less than a quarter of them reported feeling motivated to actually participate in the physical political system.
So viral views on a platform do not automatically convert into capturing actual votes at a polling booth.
Which leaves us with a massive provocative question for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. We started by looking at governments desperately trying to lock down physical borders, secure international funds, and plant flags on the moon. But as algorithms get exponentially better at locking down our attention, and as AI makes the virtual world indistinguishable from the real one, who really holds the ultimate control over our future? Will our next elections be decided by informed human intent, or simply by whoever masters the code of our shortest attention spans? Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we're eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.